So the other day I was perusing my Steam library and noticed a game that I had bought last year called Death and Taxes. I had only played it for about 40 minutes before turning it off and ignoring it. This wasn't because the game was bad, no, far from it. There's a lot about the game that I'm going to be praising here in a bit. No, I stopped playing because it so far has been the only game I've ever played that made me feel like a bad person. This is one of the few games that kept me up at night thinking about what I had just experienced, questioning my in-game choices like they were reality. I'm going to try my best and talk about the game without spoilers, so I apologize if anything I say sounds rather vague or incomplete. So, what do you do in Death and Taxes? Well, you play a Grim Reaper, and it is your job to determine who lives or dies. While that sounds simple on the surface, it really isn't. Each in-game day, you're given a set number of people and a brief description of who they are. You're also given a memo from your boss with some instructions to guide your decision making. And you'd be surprised how this simple setup can lead to you questioning your own morals. Even with the limited amount of info you're given about the individuals whose fate you're supposed to determine, they become incredibly humanized. Everyone is just vague enough that you can potentially fill in the blanks, imagining more of their life. One thing that I really appreciate is that the game is filled with shades of moral gray. No one is inherently good or evil, and that makes it much more difficult to judge. Even the people who seem to be usually have something that can push them one way or the other, and you typically don't find that out until after you've made your decision. On top of this moral grayness, you also have your guidelines. These guidelines can be as simple as kill everyone older than 60, or they can be more complex combinations of various guidelines. These guidelines typically go against what most would argue are morally correct, thus forcing the player to choose. Do I be a good employee and follow orders, or do I just follow my gut? Of course, you could also go full Jesus Christ Superstar / full Postal. If you so choose. But you are reprimanded and lose out on pay for that day, and you will eventually be fired, leading to a game over. Now, once you've made your decisions for the day, you go to your boss's office for a performance review, and then you're free to explore the rest of the office, purchase knickknacks, and customize your Reaper. And I 100% recommend you talk to everyone for reasons I'll get into later. Now, at time of writing, I've only done a single playthrough, and I do plan on doing more. But I'm actually kind of sad that I will be doing more. Again, not because it's a bad game, but in the words of Zero Punctuation's Yahtzee Croshaw during his review of Return to the Obra Dinn, after I finished it, I felt the sudden melancholic realization that I could only experience it for the first time once. Because now that I know a decent amount of the outcomes of most of the choices I've made for the game, that knowledge will forever taint my following playthroughs. Now, you may be asking yourself, okay, this sounds nice and all, but what separates this from a morality test I can do with my web browser? Presentation. This game is easily one of the most well put together games I've ever seen outside of maybe Nintendo exclusives. Everything meshes together so perfectly, from the visuals to the voice acting to the writing, everything just fits. I honestly can't determine who my favorite character is, and I'm sad that, again, I've only done one full playthrough, so I might be missing stuff. I'm sad that it appears that most of the characters are one-offs that you can really only speak to once. And this doesn't end with voice characters you work with. This very much extends to the mortals who are meant to spare or kill. It honestly amazes me how a picture in a brief paragraph can get you so involved in a fictional character's life, making you love or hate them with seemingly no effort. Now, there is one thing I can really appreciate about the game, and that is the time limit, or lack thereof. As far as I know, there's absolutely no time limit when deciding who lives and dies. I was originally mixed on this because I thought the added pressure of a hard time limit could force the player to go with their first instinct rather than constantly go back and forth. But the more I think about it, the more I can appreciate the lack of a time limit. One, because the back and forth creates the moral conundrums that make me love this game. If the game had a hard time limit, I would have quickly devolved into just following my guidelines every day, ignoring the newsfeed you were given, and not allowing myself to get invested in these characters. I 100% recommend that everyone plays Death and Taxes. It's on Steam, there's a demo, and the game itself will run on absolutely everything. It's not super long, but in an age where it feels like every game out there is trying to do everything it can to take up the rest of your life, it's refreshing to have a game come in, say what it wants to say in a single playthrough, and then kindly excuse itself. On that note, I've been Rowan, and I'll see you after the bloopers. This is one of the few games that kept me up at night thinking about what I just experienced, questioning my in-game choices as if they were reality. Oh, that was bad delivery. This is one of the few games at night that kept me up. This game is easily one of the most well together. So, I've always been a games as art person, and part of that is playing games outside my comfort zone. That being first-person shooters and Western-style RPGs. I mean, hell, Fallout New Vegas is one of my favorite games of all time, and it's pretty much a perfect mix of those two. So, if you have any recommendations for games, send them my way. But for now, I'm gonna play some more Bolt Gun.